In this lesson, we're going to talk about passing data to pages using an alternate method. In the previous lesson, we sent data to pages using the GoToPage action, which would insert the unique ID automatically into the URL. And we can also update that URL by adding a readable field so that it makes it a little bit more legible and identifiable. But you can remove this entire system so that you don't have this long string of numbers and replace it with a completely custom path. Now, the setup for this and managing this type of URL structure is a little bit more manual, but I do want to share this method because if the appearance of the URL is important to you, Bubble does give you the option to change the way that it looks and continue to have a dynamic page system. So the first thing you'll need to do is you won't want to have a type of content set to it. You need to remove the type of content because we're going to not require data to be sent to the page using that traditional method. Instead, we're going to extract a specific part of the URL to then look up a matching record in your database. So you can see that now that I've removed the type of content, I have a couple errors that showed up. There's no longer a thing for the page for these texts to reference. So what I'm going to do is put my texts inside of a group. I'm going to click on this element and then hold down the Shift key to select another element at the same time. Now I have multiple selected. I'll right click and do Group Elements in a Group. And this group is going to act as my main data source to extract a custom path in the URL and then look up a record in the database and act as a shortcut to that record for everything inside of it. So usually when I'm setting up pages like this, this group that I've just created is going to be my main element that everything will be inside of it. So I'll actually make it really big. And everything in the page will go in it, specifically things that need to reference this record. You can obviously see that I have a search button outside of it, so I'm going to move that inside as well. And we're also going to move our search bar. Now, not everything in here needs to reference the found record, but to make things easy for your setup, if you are doing a dynamic page like this, I like to go ahead and just have everything inside the group because, again, we need something to reference the record that is being looked up. And that group is going to do that for us. So I'm just going to center this group. I'm going to label it group main content. And we'll center these items here inside. Okay, now my group is going to have a type of content of job post. Okay, no longer the page. This will not have a type of content, but the group will. The data source of the group is where we look up the record based on the path that we will have in the URL. We haven't gotten there yet for how to send that value into the URL, but I'm setting up the extraction piece first. So the data source is going to be a search for job posts, and we want to add a constraint. The some field in our job post needs to match whatever is in the URL. Now, we used the title for the readable URL in the previous lesson. What I would like to do in this case is create a completely separate field specifically for this URL lookup. That way, if the title ever changes, the URL can stay the same. And you can allow your users to really customize the URL so that it has a specific wording and is not necessarily the same as the title or some other field here. So I'm going to go back to my data tabs and then go to job post. We're going to add a new field here. I'm going to call this URL path. And this will be a text. If you're familiar with creating dynamic pages, this is also known as the slug of a dynamic page. So you could label it that if you want. I'm calling it URL path so that everybody is super clear on what this field is for. And again, it's just a regular text. So this is specifically for our URL setup. When the job post is created or if it's modified, whoever has control, whether you're doing it automatically or you're giving your users an input to set up this URL path, you'll just need to remember to save this value to the job post record. So we're going to go back to design and then back to our data source here. So again, we're trying to look up the job post whose URL path field matches the value in the URL. Okay, so search for job post and then URL path equals, and we're going to extract the value from the URL. So we'll insert dynamic data, and I'll scroll to the bottom here, get data from page URL. Now, before, we were using this to extract parameter values, and the parameter has a key and value pair. But here we're going to use a different system. We're going to select path. This removes that key and value system and just looks for a single string in the URL. You will not have the key equals value set up. So the path doesn't need to be labeled in any way. You're only going to have one path after your page name. So this is what it's looking for. As an example here, before I do anything, an example path for this page would be something like job post assistant professor, and that's it. No URL parameters, no question mark. This is simply the path that comes after the page name. So that's what we're extracting here. When we look up the job post, we want to find the post where the URL path saved to the post is the same as the one in the URL. And we'll grab the first item from that search result list. That also means that we are assuming every single job post has a unique URL path. So you'll need to remember that when you save a URL path value to a job post, you need to check your database and make sure that there are not other job posts with that same path. Otherwise, you'll have a conflict and Bubble's just going to return the first one, but it might not be the one that you want. So you want to make sure that you only save unique values here. We'll go through that example so you can see how to do that type of conditional workflow. So this group, again, is just looking up that post. And once it has been found, it's going to be the data source of this group, and everything inside of the group can reference the group's found post. So now my text here can reference the parent group's job post title, and then the company will be the parent group's job post's company's name. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my database and app data, and I'm going to manually update some of my job posts to give them a path so that we can demo this page here. I'm going to expose the URL path field here so that I can see, because I've added this new field, none of them have a value, so I have to go in here and manually edit them. Of course, if you were to do something like this, you would want to provide inputs on the page for your users after an update to your application so that they can modify this field on their own. So I'm going to select this first one, assistant professor, and we'll change the URL path to assistant-professor. Now with something like this, of course, you want to make sure there are no spaces because this is going to be in a URL, and we don't want to create any kinds of conflict or weird characters that are not going to be read properly when Bubble is trying to extract the path. So I would say all lowercase, hyphens for spaces is a good rule of thumb here. And let's do a couple more. Let's do for grant writer, we'll do grant writer. For VP quality control, let's do VP QC, because this doesn't need to be the same as the title. This is something that I'm creating custom specifically for this URL path system. Okay, so we've got 3 in there. That's enough for us to test out. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this path and we're going to preview this page and insert the path manually so that we can just see this showing up properly first here. So right now we can see that I have no path in my URL. I just have the page name and this debugger parameter. I'm going to get rid of that first just to demonstrate this a little bit clearer. So we can see that Bubble is automatically pulling the first record in our database. To prevent this from happening, because we do not have a path here, we can either hide the group or we can redirect the user back to a search page or something so that this doesn't happen where if you have an empty path, the user doesn't see some random record on this page. So if I wanted to redirect the user, I'm going to copy this data source here, or actually we'll do this. We'll go to workflows and when the page is loaded, all right, and only when get data from page URL, the path is empty, then we want to redirect the user away from this page because there would be nothing to show anyway. So we're going to do a navigation action back to, let's say, search. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the path value is, just as long as it's empty, we don't want the user to stay on this page because there would be nothing to show. We don't want to show them a random job post. So I'll refresh the page so you can see what that looks like. We don't even get a chance to see that random record. Bubble will automatically redirect the user to the search page. So now I'm going to manually type in the URL for our job post page and one of our path values here. So assistant professor, like that. We can see that the record was properly pulled up. If I change this over to our other one, was VP QC for quality control, we can see that it is still finding the right one. And we're not using the URL parameter system anymore because it's doing it in a different way. That group is finding that record and acting as the data source, in other words, the shortcut to a specific record, and everything inside can reference it. So from here, you can update your navigation actions to provide the path as a part of the URL. So for example, let's go back to our search page. And this button here to view post details, search edit workflow. So here we'll do a different system. We're not going to use the go to page action because we cannot add a path to within the settings of this action. Let's see if I can pull it up here. It's thinking just for a second. In fact, right now, with this action that was previously set up, I already have an error here because that post page no longer has a type of content set to it. So I cannot have a value here. But we're not going to use this action anyway, so I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to replace it with a regular navigation open an external website action. So here we have to construct the URL a little bit manually. This is what I was talking about, where you have to do a little bit more work to make it function this way, but the trade-off is that your URL is a little bit cleaner. It doesn't have that big, long string of numbers. So what we're going to do here is navigate to the website home URL, and this is going to automatically insert your app's domain, as well as the words version test like this here, if you're running the application in the development mode. Of course, if you're not in the development, if you're in live, then that's not going to be in there. And then you'll want to add the page name after that yourself. So you don't need that last slash. This expression will add the last slash for you. So I'm just going to type in job post, since that's the name of my page. And then I'm going to do another / to insert the current cell's job posts URL path. Okay, so we are constructing this URL so that when the user clicks on this button, they are taken specifically to that address, and the group on the page will know what data to display here. And we do want to make sure we have a last / at the very end there. Great, so now I'm going to go back to the search page so we can see this working. And I had created a path for assistant professor, so I'll go ahead and click this one. And we can see the structure of the URL is exactly as I've set it up here in this workflow action. Website home, the / is included there, job post, which is the page name, / current cells, job post URL path, and then that last /. That's exactly what we see here. And we're able to properly pull up the record. So the things to just remember about this structure is that your page type should not have anything set to it. So I'm back on the job post page, and this should be blank. It's a good idea to have a reference to the record that's being looked up somewhere on the page, and I like to make it one big group that contains everything inside of it, because it'll make it a lot easier for everything within to reference that thing's field. And the search for that specific record would be a search for the thing where the URL path, this is the custom field you'll need to create, equals whatever is in the path of the URL. And here you will extract that value by using get data from page URL. Once you select get data, you can choose path as the type of data you want to extract. You're not working with parameters here. And then anytime you navigate to the page, you'll want to construct the URL via an open and external website action. And using website home URL is a nice little shortcut to give you that first part of the URL, so that in case you change your domain and you're on live versus test versions, you're not having to create multiple versions of this URL here. Now let's take a look at the workflow that would be used to save the URL path to begin with, because I have just added these in manually, but you'll want to do workflows so that your users can save them by customizing these themselves and also checking the database to make sure that these paths don't already exist. These do need to be completely unique so that when the search is performed to find that record, it's only finding one result and there are no conflicts between multiple job posts. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard page, and let's use this space to create a very simple form for the company to create a new job post with the URL path that they want to customize. So I'm going to create an input here for the company to enter in the name of the job post. So we'll label this as job post title, or we'll do job title. And below that, I'm going to add another input for URL path. Okay, and a nice little convenient feature that you can give your users here is to show them a preview of what that URL is going to look like. So if I add a text right below this field, I can insert, construct that URL so that they know we'll use exactly the same system. Website home URL, job post is the name of the page, /, and then the value of whatever is typed into here, because if this is a preview, then we want it to react to whatever they're typing in here so that they can see. So this would be the input URLs value and that last /. That way we don't have to wait until it's saved to the database. The record could be still not created yet if this is the form to create it, but they could still actually see what that URL will look like. Okay, now I'm going to have a button here to trigger the creation of the record. This will say create job post. Obviously, we will have many more fields when we create a real job post, but this is just to demonstrate saving the URL path. Now, you do have multiple options for generating an error message in case the user has entered in a URL path that already exists. You could either prevent the button from being clickable so that a workflow doesn't run to begin with and show messaging on the page, or you can have a specific workflow run if there is a duplicate to trigger a specific set of actions in that case, or you can do a combination of both. I'm going to have both of them on here so you can see your options and you can make a decision for whatever works best in your scenarios. I'm going to add a text right next to this input that's only going to be visible if a post with this URL path that has been typed in here, it already exists. So this text here is going to do a search for, or actually this, whoops, let's close that, I accidentally clicked on the reference. I'm going to have this text say URL path already exists, please choose another. Okay, and then we'll bring this over here, make that, give it a little bit more room, and I'm going to remove the style so that I can make it red so that it's very clear that this is an error that they need to address. Okay, and now I'm going to hide this text by default. I really only want this to be visible if if a post with this path already exists. So by default, it's not visible, but we're going to add a condition to the text, and the condition will be to search the database. So we're going to do a search for job posts, and the constraint will be the URL path equals whatever value is in this input here, input URL path, okay? And we're going to count however many job posts contain this same URL path if there are if there's at least one. So when this count number is greater than 0, then we know that we can't create another post with this same path. So I'm going to show this error message in that event, and I will check this box. Okay, so again, the condition is we want to show this text element is visible only when there is at least one job post where the URL path equals this value. That's how we find that this already exists in the database. Okay, so if I preview this page just to see that message working on its own, let's see, and also let's do URL path isn't empty, because I have some records where there are no URL paths created for it. If we go to database, we can see here we have a bunch of empty ones. So my input is empty, so it's obviously finding job posts that match that empty equals empty. So this is showing up here. So what I've done is I have updated my constraints to only look at the job posts where there is a value. So URL path is not empty. This has to be, both of these constraints need to be true. Okay, so I'm going to refresh. Well, let me make this a little bit wider first so we have some room. And now I'm going to refresh the page again. Okay, so we don't have that error message right now, but if I were to type in a path that I know exists, for example, assistant professor, and I can see the text shows, and it's telling me, hey, we already have one with that, you cannot use it. And what I would do from here is disable this button if this text is visible. Alternatively, you could just use the same condition that was used on the text on the button as well. But for performance and efficiency, to allow Bubble to run your page a little bit faster and smoother, we don't need Bubble to perform this search twice. If it's performing it once, I can have the button react to the behavior of this text instead of having completely separate searches to run the same condition. This matters if your job post database is really, really big, because Bubble's going to have to search through all of those records and apply the constraint, return the count result, and evaluate whether there are more than one or not, or more than 0 or not, and kick in the condition property change. Having Bubble only do that once is much better for your application in the long run. So understanding that kind of strategy to make things efficient is really important early on, so that you're really giving your app a nice foundation for performance and giving your users a good experience. So with this button, what I'm going to do is, when the text URL path already exists is visible, then obviously I know that there is a record that already exists, because that's the only condition that would make this text visible. So when this is visible, then we're going to make the button not clickable, and I'll check that box there, and I will change the color of the background of this button to make it a little bit more clear that this is disabled. So we'll go back to our general purple, but I'll take down the transparency a bit so it'll look like more like that. And I can change the text as well and say something like, please change URL path. All right, so now let's preview the page, and I'm just going to copy this here so I don't have to type it in again. and see what happens to both the text and the button. So I'll paste this in. So this is visible, and because this is visible, this button is no longer clickable, and I cannot create a job post yet. Also notice that our preview URL here is showing up so that the user can see what their URL will look like. If I do something else, for example, assistant dean of students, we know that doesn't exist in our database, so that text goes away, which in turn makes the button clickable again. And now I can create a workflow to create a new job post record. I would use data, create a new thing. The thing to create would be job post. And at the moment on my page, I only have two inputs for the title and for the URL path. So I would save the title to that job title inputs value and the URL path, of course, to our URL paths value. Just like that. If you wanted to allow the user to click the button anyway, even if there is an error here, but then generate an alert message or some pop-up with an error message and customize the behavior so that that's how they see the error, you can do that as well. You would just need to create a conditional workflow event. So I would copy this event here for the button and then paste it. And then use the same condition I used on this text as a condition for the workflow. So we're just looking for job posts again that have the URL path and also are not empty. So I'll copy this expression. And for the workflows, for one of these, let's choose the first one here. I'll paste in this expression. So when there is at least one, then that's an error. So instead of creating a job post, we're going to, let's show that text, that error text. Okay, and then on the other one, I'll paste in the same expression, but I'm going to change it a little bit. When there are no posts with this URL path, so count is 0, then I will allow the creation of that new job post record. So we have opposite conditions here doing two different things. This is just an alternate way of generating or of showing the user that error message. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the condition for the text, and it's only going to appear through the workflow and not as a visibility property change here. And then this button, I'm going to make this always visible. So I'll remove that condition completely so that the user can click it no matter what. But if there is an error and it meets this condition, then it will show that red text. So let's try that out. This is just an alternate path for you. So I'm going to do assistant professor. Okay, so notice how we do not see the text. This is a duplicate. So when I click on the button, I see the error here. Okay, now this is a very simple response to this type of error. You'll probably want to have something more to let the user know that they need to replace this with something else. You could reset the input so that it clears out. You could have the button change text if you wanted, but that's just to demonstrate a response here, an error response. So let's create a new job that doesn't exist yet in our database. And I will say sound engineer, and we'll do sound engineer here. And again, this is also something you'd want to do is when input changes, we hide this text. In case they decide, oh, okay, I see, I need to replace it, or I'm going to change what this is, we want to reset this whole display a bit. So when this input has changed, you can create an action from that workflow event to hide this text. I'm going to go ahead and create the job post, and let's check out our database. For job post, I'll refresh this data here, and I can see my new job was created with that URL path. A little trick here for things like this when you want to generate paths automatically for the user, you can use the job title as a template. So if we create an initial content for the URL path, we can say, let's take the job title and convert it over to a URL path that will work. We'll make everything lowercase, and we'll find any spaces and replace them with a hyphen. So if I were to do this under the URL path input, I would take the value of the job title. This is the initial content again. And I'm going to first make everything lowercase because I know that this is going to end up in a URL. And I'm going to find and replace any spaces. And I'm just going to type in a space character. It might be a little hard to see, but we'll do it. You should be able to see it here. There we go. So if I highlight, I can see that there's a space there. And then we're going to replace by a hyphen. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh the page. And this is just kind of a make it a little convenient for your users. So if I did, let's see, math, we'll do uppercase, of course, math teacher. Okay, it automatically lowercase all of my letters and added this hyphen in between. I didn't have to type that in. That's just a nice touch to make the form go by a little bit faster for your user. I also hit enter key on my keyboard after I typed this in, and that did trigger this workflow. So if we go into the database and I refresh, there's math teacher and math teacher there. So a really good thing that you would want to do is after creating the job post is reset your inputs so that everything clears out and is much more clear that, that the post was created. What I would also do here as a way to reset every single time a new post is created is make sure to hide that error text just in case it was visible from a previous attempt. And as another safeguard to, like I was saying before, when this is changed, you'll want to reset and hide this text as well, because if we're using the workflow to show it, anytime this is changed, we want to make sure that it starts from that default state, which is not visible. So I will right click this input, start edit a workflow, and we will go to element actions and hide the text. Even if what they've typed in again is still a duplicate, we only want it to show up again once they've clicked that button. So we'll hide this text here. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh the page, and I'll do another one, science teacher. Okay, and we'll create job posts so that we can see everything clear out. Perfect. And if I try to do assistant professor and create job post, then it'll show. But then if I change it again to geography teacher, it will hide it because I have changed the value and it's starting me over again, and only the workflow will decide to show it or not.